I would like to turn the call over to Dr. Adair White-Johnson. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here to chat with you guys. This is going to be a great evening for you and for me as well. I love to share the information. So let me begin by saying typically when I present, I like to say I present from my experience and my expertise. It's not a cookie cutter approach. I share, when we talk about living well with lupus, I share what has worked with me and with others I'm familiar with. And so I take a little bit of a different approach. I've been living with lupus since I was diagnosed in college, and I want to say it was January of 1987. So I have lived most of my life with lupus. I've lived more of my life with lupus than without lupus. When I was diagnosed, like I said, I was a senior in college before I was married, before I had children. So I've been through a lot with it, as many of you also have. And somewhere along the way, I decided to take the control that I could have control over. The body, not so much. It does what it does, but my mind is what helps me to cope and live well with it. So every time I teach and I speak about living with lupus, I always speak from the perspective of changing how you think, because if you can change how you think, then you can change how you behave. So that's the perspective I'll be sharing with you tonight. 7 steps that I have created for living well with lupus, not just during the regular time of the year, but through Christmas time, because as Terry said, there's a whole lot going on that changes around the Christmas holidays. So, and this is a little bit different in the times that we live in. We're kind of uncertain. You don't know what you should do, what you shouldn't do. It changes from day to day or week to week. Every time we turn around, there's something different. But again, I strongly and firmly believe that a lot of it starts in your mindset. So if we can get our minds right, then we can get our bodies right to a certain degree. As I said before, lupus has a mind of its own. Even when my mind is right on point, I'll wake up and feel like crap and like, okay, I can't do this today, even though my mind was right, So it'll creep up on you. But generally speaking, overall, to live that happy, health, safe and secure life, it begins with the mindset. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to share with you what these 7 steps are, and I'll explain them all to you. As Terry said, if you want to go ahead and put the questions that you have in the chat box, I'm not sure if she wants me to address them at the very end, but she'll let me know. But go ahead and you'll be able to address them. I do have some notes here so I don't go off on a tangent, and I'm operating from 2 screens. And so if you see me looking to the side, I'm really still here, but I'm just operating from 2 screens and some notes, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I'm going to start this from the beginning. Slideshow from beginning. Okay, now this is the part where I confuse myself. What do you guys see on your screen? Because I have 2 screens.
Adair, you want to share the other screen now? Because
Okay.
We're seeing the slideshow. We're not seeing the actual presentation, which might be on the other screen.
Okay, so that's the part where I get confused. Even when I teach my classes, I get confused.
That's
so
okay.
Which one?
Now go ahead and say share, and then you should have a choice to see the full screen. Did you start the presentation?
Yeah, I started it. Should I stop it?
No, that's fine. Go ahead and hit share.
Well, share is whited out. Is white now. It's not blue. Okay, there's blue. Okay. So what do you see? The same thing?
Now we see your presentation.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
There you go.
I always have my students help me with that because I get all confused with these 2 screens. Like, I don't know who's seeing what. Okay. So this is just the title. Get over it. 7 steps to living well with lupus during the holiday season. But what I'm going to share with you, you can use throughout the year, but particularly focusing on the holiday season because that's where we are now. Okay, where's my arrow button? Okay, too many things. Okay, do you see the next screen? I want to make sure.
Yep, we do.
Okay, awesome. So this is and I don't want to call it a theory because the researcher in me knows it takes doing collecting data over a series of time before you can call something a theory. But this is the mindset that I use. This is what I teach and I share and how I live my life to live well with lupus. And it's my belief system. And with the belief system, there are 7 steps that I will cover tonight: birth control, emancipation, listening, inner integrity, evolution of emotions, victory, and ending. So I'm not going to do a deep dive because this is literally like a whole class, but I'm going to share with you the most important parts of each one. And this is the mindset. I always tell people, you have to trust and believe, and you have to trust the process. A lot of people will say, yes, I do believe. Yes, I do trust. I'm very faith-based, but I don't shove it down, people's throats, but that's just the way I am. A very faith-based. People will say that they trust and believe, but then they question what has been presented before them. And it just shows that they really don't trust and believe all the way. I'm a firm believer in belief, and this is the system that guides my life. So let's start with B. Oh, we're going to skip that one. B is going to be birth control. So I know many of you are saying, okay, what does this have to do with this particular presentation? And I say, just as many people use contraceptive methods to prevent pregnancy, to block becoming pregnant, to stopping the pregnancy and unplanned pregnancy, we have to create methods to stop ourselves from birthing negativity in our own lives. Sometimes we are our worst enemies and we get in our own way of success, of happiness, of safety, of security, of even being healthy. We get in our own way. So if you want to live well, if you want to deal with all the hustle and bustle of the holiday season, it begins with your mindset and really stopping yourself from being your own worst enemy, stopping the negative thoughts to come in your mind. If today is not a good day, that doesn't mean tomorrow is not going to be a good day. I look at it like, okay, today sucks, it's horrible, but tomorrow is just a day away. So instead of birthing negativity, saying today was horrible, I know tomorrow is going to be horrible too. Instead, let me deal with today. But what's going to be positive is that tomorrow is just a day away. And that's important because sometimes we'll find ourselves wallowing in, fear, confusion, and doubt. And then we start to attack our own selves. So when I say using birth control, that's one of the mindset shifts that we have to protect ourselves against birthing negativity into our own lives. It has nothing to do with anybody else. This is what we do to ourselves. So when we take birth control as women, for example, we're protecting ourselves. So when we take birth control for our mindset, we're protecting our minds, which will then also protect ourselves. So it's really important that you create a form of birth control, to stop yourself from being your own worst enemy. And this could include, and I'm a big fan of writing because I'm an author. This can include journaling. This can include taking your phone and sharing your negative thoughts, just getting them out, out. I work with little children part-time, and we talk about this. They'll be angry in the morning at 8:30 in the morning, and I may see them at 9:30 or 10. And I'm like, okay, so that happened at 8:30. It's 10:30 and you're still mad? You're still angry? We have to put a timer on this. I respect your feelings because feelings are never right or wrong. It's what you do with them is what makes them right or wrong. But you have to put a timer on those feelings. Don't let it ruin the whole rest of your day. So part of that in helping them, I'll tell them, maybe you can record to get the anger out. Use your phone to just cuss out whoever needs to be cussed out, whoever did whatever to you. If you need to cry it out, take a moment. I was at the school today. The teacher was having a bad afternoon. I happened to walk in. I told her, go to the restroom, let it out, get yourself together. Then you have to come back and deal with the 3rd grade class. So really getting rid of that negativity. Don't let it give birth to more negativity. So she was able to come back in the classroom and deal with her children. So I hope this makes sense to you when I talk about birth control, and that you want to create a contraceptive method that can stop you from, birthing more negativity in your life. Whether it's, again, you may want to exercise, you may want to walk, you may want to talk it out with somebody, you may want to write, whatever it takes for you to stop getting in your own way is what you want to do, especially during the holiday season, because there is so much that's going on. So I hope that makes some sense. Okay. So the next step in it is emancipation. And emancipation is related to birth control. Birth control focuses on you taking control of your own life and stop giving birth to negativity and to toxic situations. The emancipation is freeing yourself from the negativity that others may bring to your life. And that happens a whole lot over the holiday season because we're more engaged and more involved in our families, from Thanksgiving to Christmas to New Year's. Family that we may not normally see and deal with, we're now seeing and dealing with, because that's just the culture of the holiday season, family gatherings. But you still have to protect yourself and your mindset. So when we talk about emancipation, we want to free ourselves from toxic people, toxic things, and toxic environments. You just want to free yourself from that. And I know sometimes you can't go, if the toxic person is in your house, you may not be able to escape, but you can control how you deal and how you respond to the toxic person. Everyone is different. Everyone's situation is different. So it's not a cookie cutter approach, but you have to get the mindset that you're not going to let them steal your joy because they never gave it to you in the first place. So it's a matter of thinking of the universe is abundant with joy and happiness. You deserve a piece, and anybody that tries to take it from you, that's stealing. Don't let them steal it from you. So free yourself from the negativity that surrounds you. And sometimes some of us actually love it when we're in the midst of things, because we think, we're thriving. That's going to make us feel good. We're in the midst of whatever. And we accept, negative behaviors because we want love and acceptance so much. You don't have to do that. If you're going to live well, because stress is, can lead to a flare-up. And if you are feeling stressful because of what other people are doing in your life, see who you can eliminate from your life. You obviously can't get rid of everybody, but maybe you can reduce their presence in your life. Maybe you can reduce the impact that they have on your life. So when we talk about emancipation, we're talking about letting go as much as we can of all those stressful things in our lives that we know are stressful, but we keep doing it anyway. What do they say? If you do something, if you keep doing the same thing and expect different results, that's the definition of crazy. So you have to ask yourself, what am I crazy about in my life right now? What still irritates and stresses me out that I can control, that I have some control over, that I can release, that I can let go? And it's really important that you remember that just because you walk away doesn't mean you've given up. It just means you made a choice. So when you're walking away from these toxic people, situation, and things, it doesn't mean you're giving up on anything and anyone. It just means you're making a choice to have your peace of mind, to free yourself, to emancipate yourself from toxic energy, which is going to impact your stress level. So I hope that one makes sense. Okay, the third one is going to be listening. And this is the part where a lot of times we hear a lot of people, there's a lot of noise in our lives, between work, if you're in school, family, friends, significant others, there's a lot of noise. Sometimes we have to stop and just listen to our guts, or listen to ourselves, listen to those inner voices, listen to what's happening within us. Remember, I said you have to change how you think before you can change how you behave. But if you're not listening to yourself, then how do you know what you're thinking? Sometimes you have to silence the noise around you to hear what you're actually saying and listening to what you're saying. Even when it comes to our bodies, we, as lupus patients living with lupus, sometimes we have to stop and listen to our bodies. As much as we may want to go hang out with our friends on Saturday night, or there might be an extremely important, meeting at work the next day. If our bodies are telling us we can't do this, we have to learn to listen and try and do it in another way. We've got to learn. Thank God we're in a situation now. We're in a season where going virtual or being virtual is not taboo, where it's okay if you can't physically be present, but you can virtually be present. Making different choices, really honing in and listening to what your heart is saying, what your soul is saying, what your mind is saying. And that's going to impact what your body is saying. They all kind of work together. But a lot of times we listen to what other people say before we listen to what we're saying to ourselves, before we listen to what our gut is telling us, following our instincts. So if you're surrounded by toxic people and you know it, but you're trying to cover it up and you're putting Band-Aids on gunshot wounds to make the relationship work, you may need to take a step back and listen to what your gut is telling you. Because if your gut is all torn up and you got all this toxic stuff, these feelings inside of you, that's going to impact you physically. It's going to impact you physically. So you have to think about that. You really want to think about listening. So when we talk about your the leadership, and I'm not going to do a deep dive with that, but leadership is after listening. What are you going to do to lead your life to a better path? And that requires creating plans of action, because a dream without a plan is just a wish. So you can dream of doing so many things, and you can listen to your gut, listen to your heart, and you have all these dreams. But if you don't have a plan how to execute the dreams, then they just become wishes. So I'm not going to do, because with leadership, that's an entirely kind of different conversation, but it's important that you become the leader in your own life and don't let others dictate the steps that are for you. So really taking ownership over that. But in taking ownership over that, you have to be cognizant and you have to be aware of your own inner integrity. And what does that mean? Inner integrity really means being honest with yourself. Sometimes when we're so stressed out, we did it to ourselves. We caused it. We can be our own worst enemy, or we caused the mess and the drama in our lives with people. So we have to look and be honest with ourselves. What did I do? How did I contribute to this situation? And once we identify that, what can I do to fix it? What steps can I take? So if you're lying to yourself, on the other hand, saying everything is perfectly okay, and you know that it's not, then how can you lead your own life? How can you reduce your stress levels if you are not addressing the cause? If you're not addressing what's really happening? Again, it's putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. And unless you're honest with yourself and evaluating and synthesizing and analyzing what's happening in your life, it's going to impact your stress level. And if you don't want that to happen, you have to really be honest with yourself, knowing who you have that conversation with yourself. Talk to yourself in the mirror, write it out, whichever way you feel most comfortable with. And then that's what you have to do. But you have to have inner integrity, which is a part of believing in yourself. You have to have that inner integrity. Be honest with yourself as to where you stand. Talk to yourself about where you are in order to determine where you need to be. And if you have that clarity, because I've learned that a confused mind does nothing. A confused mind does nothing. If you're honest with yourself, when you have the clarity about who you are, what you need, how you do things, just overall, then you're able to create that plan to make a change. Then you're able to see things clearly, like who is toxic in your life? Why are they toxic? What situation isn't working? What type of negativity are you birthing every day? If you have that clarity in your life, then it's only going to help to reduce that stress. And again, during the holiday season, it's multi-layered, lots of things going on. It's exasperated at this point, but you have to be honest with yourself. Again, I really focus on changing how you think, and then you can change how you behave. If you do it the other way, it's putting the cart before the horse, and nothing is going to get pulled and nothing is going to be able to walk away. The next one is the evolution of emotions. And I kind of like this one in that sometimes we forget that our emotions can change over time. So what you may have felt and thought that you wanted a month ago could be different today. And guess what? It's okay. See, you own the power of change. So use that power to make the changes that you need to make. Now, if it impacts the lives of others, of course, you want to bring them in on how you think and what you're feeling, and maybe bring them in on the plan to make the change. But don't doubt yourself, and don't doubt yourself, and don't get upset with yourself because you don't feel the way you felt last month. It's okay. We're bred that way. Different experiences start to mature us, and different experiences force us to see the world and situations in different ways. So just because you loved somebody last year doesn't mean you have to love them this year. Just because you liked somebody last week doesn't mean you have to like them this week. And just because you may have appreciated something last week doesn't mean you have to appreciate it this week. And where we run into issues and problems, because then we try to pretend like we still like someone and we don't like them, or we still appreciate something and we really don't. And I'm not saying you have to be rude with it, but take ownership of how you feel. Own how you feel, and then that takes the stress off of your back and pretending to be something that you're not, or pretending to feel something that you're not. Feelings and emotions change over time. Relationships change over time. Someone who was your best friend 2 years ago, your lives may have started going this way, but you guys have been holding on to the label of being best friends because you guys have been best friends maybe since college years. It's okay to change how you think and how you feel, because that's part of the evolution of emotions. That's just natural. And so the sooner that we can accept that our feelings change, the less stress we will have about pretending to like and appreciate and embrace things and people that we really don't want to. And I think other folks bring a lot of stress into our lives, and a lot of stress happens because we spend all day wearing masks. You know, in many instances, we spend lots of time wearing masks, pretending to be, or covering up, I should say, covering up who we really are and what we really think and what we really feel, so that we can navigate through the day problem-free. That's a lot, and that's stressful. The true, what is it? Shakespeare that says, to thine own self be true, something like that. It is so true. If you are solid and grounded with who you are, what you stand for, what you need, it makes life so much easier. And part of that is knowing that the evolution of emotions is perfectly fine. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to victory and victorious. And this really focuses on the positivity in your life and knowing that it's okay to claim your wins. It's okay for you to feel victorious when you do something well. You don't have to apologize for your greatness. You don't have to apologize for who you are and what you stand for. I think sometimes we stress ourselves out because we live with imposter syndrome. When we're doing something that we think that we are not qualified to do, then we think we're living the life we're not supposed to live. And we think we're an imposter, like we're not supposed to be in a position that we are. That is stressful. I know a principal of a school who doubts herself every day and thinks that she's not qualified to be in that position. That eats at her more every day, this imposter syndrome, than it does dealing with the school and everything that goes along with it. We do a lot of that. We don't think that what we have is what we deserve. And that imposter syndrome will eat you up. And that's why you have to remind yourself, it's okay to win. It's okay to say, I'm good at this. It's okay to say, life is good. We're living in a season where for many people, life isn't good, but that shouldn't stop you from thinking that your life shouldn't be good. And so even in this holiday season, there's some families who have experienced a lot of loss because of the pandemic. because of COVID. They've experienced a lot of loss, and you can be sad for them. But if that's not your family, then claim the victory and be thankful and grateful and gracious that you have your family, and you don't have to make up excuses for feeling happy about it. And so claiming the wins, claiming your victories can remove some stress. It's like we hide being great. We hide being good at something. It's like someone tells you have a nice shirt on or a nice blouse on, and you go into a soliloquy about, oh, I found this in the back of my closet. You really like this? Oh, I don't really like it. Or, I bought this 3 years ago. Or something like, oh, if your hair looks nice. Oh, you really think so? Well, I tried to curl it this way and that way, and it really didn't work. Just say thank you. Celebrate your win, claim your win, because you're adding, even though you may not be aware of it, it may be minute. As you're giving all these excuses and reasons about this top or about your hair, you're stressing yourself out because you're thinking you don't deserve this compliment when you do. And it's just a lot, and we do it to ourselves. So the V is claiming your victory, claim your wins, and over the holiday season, keep doing that. Don't get caught up in imposter syndrome. Stop thinking that you can't do this. Stop thinking that, or you shouldn't be doing this. So the V is on victory and victorious. The E is on the ending. And this one, I'm going to kind of read because I want to make sure I don't miss anything. This is so important to me, I think, during the holiday season, because relationships are usually why we get stressed out. Somebody has done something or failed to do something for somebody else, and that causes a lot of stress. So when we talk about ending, you have to learn how to end the relationships and situations that are not aligned with what you want and need in your life. And so you have to learn how to end those things that cause you pain, how to end the things that are not good for you, learning how to figure out what is good for you, learning how to determine what you don't need and what doesn't work for you, learning how to end those toxic relationships in your life, learning how to end the toxic feelings inside of you, learning how to end things that you never should have started, and learning how to begin with the end in mind, learning how to begin with the end in mind. So when we do that, we're looking at what is my end goal and what plan can I create to get to that point. Sometimes we just got to let things go. For me in my life, I say, let God and let go. Let go and let God. I'm sorry. That's how I find my face, and I trust him. And is it easy? No. I have to sit back and be patient and have conversations with God and have conversations with myself to say, hey, what are we doing here? But I know when I turn it over to him, I don't have to stress about it anymore. I don't have to worry about it because I've turned it over. I've ended my stress with it because I've turned it over. That works for me. But for you, how can you turn it over? How can you end those things that are causing you the stress? So sometimes we have to learn to just let it go, because some things want to be let go, but we still kind of holding on, by threads and strings. We're just holding on just because that's the way it's always been. But if you can learn how to let go, how to end things, some of the things I just listed, that stress level that you're feeling, you'll be amazed. You'll sleep good at night, and it's hard. I'm not saying this is easy. It can be very hard and very difficult. But if you want to live that life that's healthy, that doesn't contribute to your flare-ups, it includes ending and letting things go. And sometimes that means letting things that we should have never started. Toxic people, toxic things, being good to ourselves. So what I've shared to you very briefly were the 7 steps. We can go in so many different directions with those, but this is my experience and my expertise, how I've been able to live well with lupus. Now, notice I didn't say live perfect, totally live stress-free, but I've found my sweet spot, my soft space. That's not to say that, on different days, there isn't something else that's but I also know how to lean on my triple shields of grace, faith, and mercy. So I know everything is going to be all right. It's a rough path. It's a little bumpy, but I know on the other side, everything's going to be okay because I do trust and I do believe. And that works, that works for me. But I do believe the things that I've said, many have said these things just in different ways. For me, I just created the acronym so I can, stick to it, understand, and remind myself. But many therapists, many people have said these same things in different ways. Of course, we also know that organizing, our to-do lists are so much longer during the holiday season. So we want to organize our days or our list, and that'll help us with that clarity. So we won't feel confused and won't get stressed because we feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't know how I'm going to get all this done. When I talked about easy wins, if you make a list of the things you have to do, if it's a list of the Christmas gifts you have to get, have a list so you can visually see it. And once you go through the list, visually check it off. We talked about easy wins. It's an easy win for me when I see I can put a check mark next to the thing. I tell people all the time, oh, I'm so happy I can put a check mark next to your name. That means I'm done with you, so I can move to the next thing. So organizing your time. I tell people my most precious commodity in my life is my time. I don't let people waste my time. I don't let people take my time. And if I give away my time, it's called volunteering. And I raise my hand for that. My time, I can never, ever, ever, ever get back again. So if you get it from me, it's got to mean something. And I know what stresses me out is if I feel someone is wasting my time. So I don't play that type of game, and I remove that type of stressor in my life. So I organize everything so I don't have to feel like somebody is wasting my time, because I will literally walk away if I feel you're wasting my time. That's just my little pet peeve on how I do it. But that organization is key to reducing that confusion and that doubt. Making sure you get sleep. Of course, we know that they tell us that, I shouldn't say sleep. Maybe I should say rest, because sometimes when I used to run around with my children when they were younger, I didn't get a lot of sleep, but I was able to get rest in the car while they were out there doing their football stuff. I'd sit in the car and halfway watch them while I was resting. Sometimes just rest your brain, just lay there. I know our devices keep us busy. I was telling Terry, my phone is broken now, but on the flip side, last night when it wasn't working at all, I realized I had more time because I didn't have the phone to play with. So resting our minds, resting yourself can also be helpful and reduce the level of stress. And trying to eat, I would say properly, but that looks different for everyone else. I know I'm not an eater. I don't have a love relationship with food. I'll get a headache, and then that stresses me out because now I have a headache and I got to get rid of the headache. It's a hunger headache because I'll go all day and not eat. So now I make a conscientious effort. I have an alarm on my phone that will tell me, at 11:30, I'm going to need you to eat something so you won't get a headache. So little things like that you can manage and control, organizing, getting more rest, trying to eat, and that type of thing. So in conclusion, I just want to say I've thrown a lot out to you in a short period of time, but just know that every drop eventually fills a bucket. So every little thing you do will actually lead to the larger goal that you have. Like I said, even with your list, Christmas gifts, when you start checking off what you've done, you'd be amazed at how it makes you feel inside, because that's an easy win. Every drop eventually fills a bucket. Knowing that if you trust and truly believe, then things are going to be all right. And when you know things are going to be all right, it automatically reduces that stress level where you can say to yourself, I'm going through this bumpy time, this holiday season, and we only have 2 more weeks. I'm going to get through it on the other side because I trust and believe. It will reduce your stress level. It really, 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 really will. So it all starts for me with the 7 steps to living well. And that is to recognize and understand and embrace the concept of belief. So that's all I got for you tonight. And so hopefully it's been helpful. That's all I have. And I'm going to stop the share and come back to you, Terry.
Okay, here we go. Adair, that was absolutely wonderful. Can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That was wonderful. So many great tips. We're getting a lot of comments, but they keep asking you, what did you get your PhD in? That keeps coming up in the comments.
So my PhD is in education, actually sociology of education with a concentration in urban education. But I have a master's degree and a 6-year degree in counseling. So I merged the two of them to be able to do the things that I do. So.
Okay. Well, your counseling really comes through in what you talk and how you talk to people and give them so many, really, I can't tell you how many great ideas. I think the one that I walked away with really was the endings, of knowing when to leave a toxic, and they always say toxic relationship, but it can be a toxic anything. It can be a toxic hobby. It can be a toxic neighbor. It can be any different thing. And it doesn't always, and it doesn't make that thing bad. It just makes it bad for you.
Right. And a lot of people will hang on to things because they don't want to look weak. They're used to it. Some people would rather live in a comfortable hell than strive to go to an uncomfortable heaven. Right. And so we're comfortable and it's easier, but we have to give ourselves permission and allow ourselves to embrace change. That's when we talk about the evolution of emotions. It's okay to change how you think and how you feel, but people kind of get stuck in that rut. So you have to learn how to end it. You really just have to. And just because you walk away doesn't mean you've given up. It means you made a choice. Like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Right. It is not, you're right. It's not about failure. It is about moving on. It's just about moving on. Okay. You know what? At this point, I want to introduce Kelly. Kelly, are you there? There you are. You can unmute yourself if you will as well. So, when I put these two women together tonight, I had no idea that it didn't dawn on me that both of you had been Faces of Hope for our chapter. So to everybody who's on the call tonight, we have a program called the Faces of Hope, where we used to pick 3 people a year to represent the chapter. And each one of these two fabulous women were Faces of Hope. And it's because they inspire people. And that word inspire is overused, but truly, both of your stories and both of your journeys and what you've done living with lupus is truly inspiring. So I'm going to give a minute for Kelly to tell her story. And Kelly, just tell us a little bit about yourself, your connection to the chapter, to lupus, and what you've been doing.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Dr. Adair, that was wonderful. I just want to say that before I introduce who I am. I'm from Georgia. I went to Georgia State University and I got my master's in public health from Morehouse School of Medicine. And that's when I got a connection with the Lupus Foundation of America when I interned there. I was diagnosed with lupus when I was 16, so I was in high school. And it was really more joint stuff and headaches, but like it hit me pretty hard in college. My sophomore year is when I developed pleurisy, and I kind of had to figure out what this lupus thing is, because how I experienced it as a teenager was not how I was experiencing it in my late teens, early 20s. And so for me, I had to so I do research, right? So right now I'm in a PhD program for epidemiology at the University of Pennsylvania. And so my focus will be on autoimmune diseases, specifically in lupus. And so that's my connection is personal. And I've learned a lot from the organization and reaching out to people and being a support group leader. And so that's really my big connection. And we walk in this, so who's better to research it or tell us ways to, like Dr. Adair was doing, tell us different ways to cope. I think it hits differently when someone is experiencing the same disease you have, at least, may not be the same symptoms, but they can at least get an insight and they can give you some ways that they've coped with it. And that's how I've kind of dealt with it, especially with the college age lupus people, kind of how did I get a degree? Sometimes I'm still baffled that I did, but this is how I did it with lupus, even though I had a huge flare. And so that's kind of my connection to it. Hope that's what you asked for, right, Terry?
I did. And, okay. I think, I didn't think I emphasized, I said it to you when I talked to you yesterday, what a smarty pants you are. So you are at the University of Pennsylvania getting this PhD. And it's interesting when you say you looked back and said, how did I do this? Go through college. And, you were one of my interns when you were in graduate school. And it wasn't easy for you, Kelly. You had tough times with it. And so I want to ask to that. And I saw some of those tougher times, but you kept your head on straight and you kept on going. What helped you do that when you were having those tough times? I remember one was a leg injury. You were having trouble with your foot at the time. And you would come in, but you were very honest. You were very honest about being in pain and how difficult it was, but you just kept pushing forward. How did you do that?
So I think that I just kind of got to a point where I was tired of lying. Like, people ask me how I'm doing, or I think it just kind of got to a point where I didn't want people to know that that's my baseline. So like, if I'm having an off day and you see more typos in an email I sent, that's not my standard. I'm just having a rough day. So I think that the way I kind of dealt with it was to communicate, like, I just don't feel well today, which was actually really hard for me to do. And I'm sure a lot of us, because you don't want to say if something's wrong, you kind of just want to push through. And also I wanted to make a good impression. I knew I had a degree to finish. I didn't want any more student loans. And so it was just kind of like I had a goal and I just had to figure out how to maneuver around it. And I've honestly found that being honest actually helped me, because like one day you would give me like an extra 30 minutes and I would just kind of go sit and do nothing. And that was like super helpful. Whereas maybe if I didn't do that, those 30 minutes helped me get through the rest of the day, or I could take my medication and I have to worry about having to run to the bathroom, or like, all these different things. And so I think that communicating what I needed was like helpful. And I think I realized how to do that when I was in college a little bit, because I realized that other people were communicating like, I have ADHD, and they had like a whole plan for like school on how to help them. And like, I'm over here trying to breathe and I didn't ask for help. So I think it came out of experience of failing, honestly, of not doing those things and then struggling through, realizing that it didn't have to be that way. So that's kind of how I pushed through, and knowing that I'll get it done. I just may be there with you until like 6-7 o'clock at night, but we'll get it done. I just may need extra time for that day, but then the next day I may come back super strong. And I think what Dr. Adair said, I really had to create a mindset of like, today is rough, tomorrow may be rougher, may be better. So why not me just have a positive mindset and say, let's just get to the day and see what tomorrow brings. So I think that I connected when you said that, like the first part is like kind of centering your brain, and like, it doesn't always have to be this way. It may not always be this way. Like, it's like ebb and flows. So that's how I did it.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. And Dr. Adair White-Johnson, if you would speak to, you said a little bit when you were talking about taking off the mask, and just comment on what Kelly just talked there about the honesty. I think that's just a huge component of it. We're all so used to saying, "How are you?" Fine. And maybe that's part of the fact that it's a chronic illness, when you just get sick of saying what's going on, but it's not helpful. It's not helpful if to give people the impression you're fine when you're not. But go ahead.
So for me, I've got some age on you, Kelly. So I've kind of conditioned myself over the years. It just depends on who asks me. If I think, and I don't want to use the wrong language, but remember I said about my time, if I think that I don't want to say worthy of, but I can't think of another word. If you're worthy of my time that I'm going to take to explain to you how I really feel, then I'm going to explain to you how I really feel. If you're not important enough in my life, then you will get the general, oh, I'm okay, or I feel, I never say I'm fine when I'm not. How deep my explanation goes depends on who I'm speaking with. So I've learned also to respond where I'll say, I may not be where I want to be, but I'm not where I used to be either. So I kind of, just depends on who it is that will determine, but I never just say I'm fine if I'm not, because typically you can look at me and see it's always in my eyes that you can see that I'm not fine. I just learned years ago in the school system where I was at, felt like at the time I was the only diagnosed lupus patient back in the early 90s, and they didn't understand it. And I had to take time off of work, and it was really messy. So I got real defiant and real, I don't want to say aggressive, but assertive, where I wasn't wearing a mask. I was walking them through everything that I went through. So they needed to understand what it was like to live with lupus. And to a degree, it really worked, because I would hate to say I call myself the poster child for lupus in that school system, but that's really what it ended up being. And then when I became a face of lupus, I really was the poster child. So that was the funny thing. But I just stopped wearing the mask. And so in answer to your question, how in-depth it goes depends on who's asking and if I feel like it. But if I don't feel, I'll tell someone, and they say, oh, I didn't see you here yesterday. Well, I have lupus and I couldn't come. Literally, and I'll walk away. Because I'm working at a school now part-time, and I'll wake up and I'll know I can't do this, so I don't want to do this today. And so my explanation, next day I have lupus, I didn't feel like it.
There you go. There you go. Well, I think what's interesting with that too, it is adjusting that answer to people. And I think it's also not so much, it's not even to me to how much important a person is in my life. It's how much I know they'll listen to the answer. Because sometimes people ask that, they ask the question and they're off looking out the window or checking their watch or doing whatever. And then you learn with those people, you don't want to give the big in-depth answer. But Kelly, you said something that why this community is so important. It's because, Adair, if you look at Kelly and say, I'm tired, she knows what tired means. Somebody without lupus might not get what tired means. And their answer sometimes back is, well, so am I. And that's probably when the smoke is coming out of your ears, because it's a different kind of tired. So it's really being able to talk to people who get it, right? Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
It does. It does. And sometimes I can honestly say, I don't feel like explaining. Like I just don't, I don't feel like that's more time that, I feel like not that I'm wasting that time. I just don't feel like it. I'm just at this stage in my life. I don't do anything that I don't want to do unless the government tells me I have to.
I love it.
It's definitely unburdening to just say, I don't feel good today. Like if I said that to Dr. Adair, she'd be like, okay. And like, that's it. Like, I don't have to say what exactly is hurting, why it's hurting, how long it's been hurting. It's just like understood. That's like super unburdening. Whereas when you don't talk to, and I'm sure that's across all diseases, right? Like you just kind of get it. So that's definitely, for me, it's unburdening. It's just kind of like, it is what it is. We see each other and we can move forward.
Yeah. One of the things I realized is that once I had, because I'm also retired and the contract position I have is just a short little contract, but I retired 9 years ago. But when I was in the school system full time, I wouldn't say I had educated all the people around me. There was to the point where I could just say, I'm just having a bad lupus day. And that was enough explanation for them because I had educated them along the way, and working with them for so many years that people stopped questioning me as much. They realized because there was more education in the 90s that came about in the 2000s, people started recognizing it was more pronounced, put it like that, like it was a real disease, that they understood better, or, it's almost like they felt like it was real and I wasn't making things up. Initially, that's what I was feeling. They thought I was making things up because they didn't understand. They didn't know,
that is so often. That is so often what people hear, that they do think that they're making things up, Adair, and that's exactly how it has gone and still does continue a little bit to go. And I think part of it too is if you're being an overachiever and being an achiever and wanting to put that good face forward and not wanting to be a burden, which people with chronic illnesses are not burdens. But I talked to somebody today who is very much an overachiever with lupus and has had it's caused a lot of problems because they haven't given themselves permission for downtime. And now when they go back and tell their employer, partner, or whatever, that they are, that they're not feeling up to it, they kind of don't get it. Well, you've been doing it all this time, all along. And it kind of brought on some depression in this person run on depression, they're like, wow, I've been working hard just trying to do it. And then when I come back and say I need accommodation, you're saying, well, you've been doing it all along, so why can't you do it? So that's difficult, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Because I think it all goes back to you look fine, you look okay. Right. And not understanding what's happening on the inside. And if you don't look sick, then you should be fine in doing this. I do think it's gotten better. Absolutely. But it's still, using my own quote that I use for myself, we may not be where we used to be, but what was it that I said? I may not be where I used to be, but I forgot what I said. But we may not be where we want to be, but we're not where we used to be either. Right. So I do think, because it seems like a lot of people know someone who has been impacted or has lupus now. Whereas back in the day, I felt like I was a unicorn, where it just, because there were so many that were undiagnosed. I was fortunate where I was diagnosed right off the bat with the very first doctor, but many did not have that luxury and went through a lot before, and some people never found out, but I just think it has to do with you look fine, you look okay. And it's that, so you can work late today because you did it 2 weeks in a row. Like, right. Okay.
Right. And understanding that. That's why, Kelly, I give you a lot of kudos for being so honest about that. Give me the extra half an hour. I'll get it done. Just give me that 30 minutes. I may not get it done exactly when you want it, but I'll get it done by tonight. And I'll be here and I'll get it done. Go ahead.
I literally had to learn how to do that because I'm a bit of an overachiever and it just wasn't working. Like me trying to push that hard, like then I'd be down for a week. So like, what good is that doing me? So like, I literally just had to learn like what's feasible. Like, right. Honestly, just being honest. Like, and I think that I kind of conceptualize it as, even if I didn't have lupus, maybe if you just gave me too much to do, it's also my responsibility to say, hey, you overloaded me. And so I think that it makes me feel, because I think the issue for me was I don't want to feel different. I don't want to be treated different. Right. But then I just kind of thought like, I mean, it's kind of the same concept. If you give me too much and I can't handle it, it's up to me to say, hey, let's space this out. This is when I'm able to get it done. And then you as a boss or employer can say, okay, that's not reasonable. Let's see what we can do to get this done by this time. But it's not on the employee to like suck it all in and do everything if they can't do it. I mean, that's in every profession. Like, don't burn yourself out whether you have lupus or not. And I learned that through trial and error, a bunch of error and trial.
There you go. But you learned from that. But go ahead, Adair. Were you going to say?
I was going to say what you said, really, really speaks the truth, in that we have to stand up and stand in our truth and speak our truth. But if we aren't honest with ourselves, when I was talking about inner integrity, sometimes we're in denial of ourselves. We want to be superwoman or superman because we haven't totally accepted that we have lupus, and these are the restrictions, for lack of a better word, that impact our life. So sometimes we want to live our lives regularly as though we don't have lupus. And so we get ourselves in a situation where we are Superman or Superwoman and doing all these things and not knowing, not listening, again, is what I was talking about, not listening to our bodies that says, you can't do this. Like, go sit down somewhere, get yourself something to eat, do something. You can't do all of this because you do live with lupus. And it's that mindset, I think, that we want the world to treat us fairly or equitably, but we also have to be honest with ourselves. We have to stand in our truth and speak our truth, that you are living with lupus. Yes, it does make a difference in your life. Yes, you have to do things differently. And it doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you're a punk. It doesn't mean anything negative, that attached to it. It is what it is. And you have to take care of yourself. And part of taking care of yourself is letting the people that are going to be impacted by it, letting them know, I'm leaning back on schools, but letting your job know that this is what I have, having that conversation and that discussion, with the people. Some days I'm going to feel good. Some days I'm not. I may walk in there and I feel fine, and 3 hours later, I don't. So you have to stand in your truth first, be honest with yourself first, before you can speak your truth to somebody else. And so that's where I talk about that inner integrity and listening to what your body says. And sometimes we do too much and we need to listen to what the body is saying, like go sit down somewhere, you know, especially when I know for me, I have 4 boys, very active lives. You know, it's just a lot going on in my life, you know, even though they're older now, but I travel every weekend. And there's some Mondays when I'm supposed to go to the school, I wake up, I'm not going, I'm not doing that, you know, because I know that if I push too hard, you know, I can push myself into a flare, and you don't want to do that. Yeah. So
I think that's a great point, is that you have to be honest with yourself about it. That we have to admit, the limitation. We have to admit the limitation that's brought on by lupus, and accept it, and accept that it doesn't make you less than anybody.
Right.
It just makes you who you are, and then convey that authentic self to other people.
Yeah.
In that, but I think you're right. I think sometimes people are afraid, and like Kelly, what you said, you're afraid of letting somebody down if they're not doing it. So, and Kelly, I like what you said about trial and error, that this didn't just come to you as an epiphany. This came to you through trying certain methods, and they worked, and then other times they didn't work. And I think that's the message for all of us. Somebody did have a question about family acceptance. Can we just address that for just a minute? If you've got family members who the people closest to you don't get it, do either of you have any insight into that? Or
I would say my mom, so when I was diagnosed at 16, she didn't really subscribe to it. I guess that's the best way I can say it. It took for me getting sick in college and being hospitalized for her to like wake up. And then when I got hospitalized again, and what I did, my dad has always been kind of good. He just didn't know what was going on. But I think for my family, what I've done is I've gotten them active in the Lupus Foundation, because there's like a whole bunch of educational things, and I just like send them a link like, hey, just attend this tonight. Like, so I took the burden off of myself having to like say XYZ and like made them do some groundwork, because if they want to know, I mean, that's a lot on a person that's already not feeling well, or we don't even know all the time, like what our lupus looks like. Right. So like you could do it on your own time, go and watch the playback. So that's what I do with my family. I sent them resources for them to watch, and then they would ask me questions, and then I could say, well, this is what the doctor said, this is how I'm feeling today. So like now my mom, like she's almost like over momming at this point. It's like she was so worried about me moving to Pennsylvania because it's cold and I have like really bad arthritis. She's just like, well, you know, I just don't know. And so now she's sending me socks and long johns. But like this didn't happen like in 1 year. So I'm not saying like this change happened. It kind of happened after like a big deal, or after me saying something like, stop asking, like, you know, so I don't want to make it seem like it was just like overnight and like she got it. I think that she's still learning. I think my dad is just one of those people that he just believes what I said. I say he doesn't really need the education. He's just like, oh, you have a headache today. I'm sorry. I don't think he even like people that know my dad know he's super simple.
Your dad is awesome. I met him at our summit.
He's super chill. So he's just kind of like one of those people, and he'll ask me, oh, is that lupus related, or you just have like a regular headache? And I'm just like, I don't know, Daddy. He's like, oh, okay. And then for my wife, although she's in the medical field as a physician assistant, I think that she educates herself constantly, because I mean, she lives with me. She's the one that interacts with me the most. And so I think that she's trying to figure out when I'm actually being lazy and when I'm like having a lupus flare, and trying to help me differentiate the two. And it's actually helpful, because some days I am just lazy. Nothing wrong with me, just being lazy. And that's completely okay. So that's what I did for my family. I sent them to the Lupus Foundation and got them on the educational path.
There you go. Well, and I think there's another issue too. It's not just, I know we're running out of time in a minute here, but a lot of times there's a correlation where you can't tell whether it's lupus or it's depression. So that's right on tonight. Okay, I'm run down today and I'm not motivated. Is that a lack of motivation because I'm depressed, or is it a lack of motivation because my body is saying just quit? So Dr. Johnson, what do you say to that? To trying to figure out what it is, and family. if you want to add on family.
Well, for family, I didn't go to education route. Like I said, I was diagnosed in 87, didn't even know what a lupus foundation was until I got down to Georgia years later. I guess it was in the late 90s, I want to say, when I discovered the foundation here in Georgia. So my family has just grown and learned with me. Always been super supportive, whether they understood it or not, taking me to different doctors. I've been able to still accomplish my dreams and do the things I want to do. So when I'm sick and I need them, they know I'm sick and I need them. My children, they have learned from the time they were little, I've involved them with the foundation, but they've just learned about the lupus through the years. So my family, I don't think I've done anything special with them. They just kind of grown and learned with me. Now, anybody else, other family members who had lupus, of course, I'm the poster child. They'll call me and ask me and so on. What was the other question, Terry? I'm sorry.
About the correlation between lupus symptoms and depression.
Oh, yeah. That is a fine line. It is a fine, and not just depression, but any time that I'm sick with something, I always have to ask that question. Is it lupus related, or is this just the flu, or is this just something? Anytime I'm sick, that question comes up, and, I ask myself, and then I just kind of sort of figure it out, whether it's going to the doctor or just letting it take its course. Mindset wise, I'm probably not the best person to ask about depression, because the only time I think I ever was depressed when the lupus caused my infertility between my first son and my second son. There's an 8-year difference between the two of them. But I don't think it was because of the lupus I was depressed. It was because I couldn't have the other child, Right. So I'm probably not the best person, because other than that, I've not been depressed. I just don't let myself do that, if that makes sense. When we talk about the trust and believe, I know everything's going to be okay. So I don't stay in a black hole. So I'm probably not the best person to answer about the depression.
Right. Well, I think, there were so many great things about tonight. But both of you, thank you so much for being a part of this program tonight. And I think one of the things that was said is, where you are today is not where you're always going to be. So even if you are at a place where you're not understanding, I think, Kelly, you've seen that through your transition of everything that you've learned, and that it is, it can be a new start. Join this community. There's some people on the call tonight who said they've never been on a call before. So join in and learn and get to know people in this community who can help you. And you two were both just absolutely phenomenal. But I knew you both would be, because I know both of you. And you've both been involved in the foundation and everything that you do. You are so wonderful. And we'll close this out tonight by wishing everybody a happy holiday season. This program has been recorded, and it will be sent to your chapters, and it'll be posted on the websites. So that's another great thing too, what Kelly said. All of these programs, the Talk About It programs, are all on our website. So you can go back and look at things about nutrition, about exercise, about depression, just living with lupus in the kidneys, all sorts of resources. Make use of those resources. And I love what Kelly does. Send your family there for them to learn a little bit about it. So thank you all. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening.